Back in 2010, when I was still using a standard definition JVC Everio camcorder, which produced inferior quality standard definition video, I decided to make the jump over to HD. And this was the first camcorder that I looked into. It's a JVC GZ-HM340BU, and I believe that's a date code of March of 2009, although this is actually part of JVC's 2010 lineup of HD and standard definition camcorders. They released several different models with varying amounts of features in both the HD and standard definition models. And this would have been a half-decent camcorder if it didn't have so many problems using it. But I'll get to that in just a little while. One thing right off the bat that was a major complaint with this camcorder is the battery that it's shipped it with. It's one of these data batteries. For the uninformed, if I were uninformed, I would assume that this is a counterfeit, but it's not. It's a genuine JVC battery, but it's only a 5.1 watt-hour battery, which is ridiculously small for this kind of a camcorder that goes through batteries like nothing, because of it having to record AVC HD video, which requires a bit of power to do so. And I also got one of these JVC power adapters, AC to DC power adapters, and I learned that I wasn't able to use my old power adapters from my old standard definition of Everio. They changed the plug design just enough so that you can only use the new one with this camcorder. They're not backwards compatible. It's a 20x optical zoom, and you could see up here I actually had dropped this a few weeks into using this when it was brand new. I ended up dropping it, fell top down on the ground, and there's a plastic piece here that broke completely off, although you wouldn't even know it. It's not jagged or looks like it actually cracked off, but I haven't been able to find that plastic piece ever since. It actually shattered into a bunch of pieces. And then you have your zoom and volume controls for video playback, your snapshot button for taking low quality HD pictures to the SD card, and then here you have some LED indicator lights for access, whether it's recording or accessing anything on the SD or internal memory of this, and the power and charge indicators. And this is actually an SDHC capable camcorder, so you can use a very high capacity SD card in here to get quite a bit of recording time out of this, but you really need a huge sized memory card to even get a decent amount of recording time, because the AVC HD files that this camcorder produces are ridiculously huge. And they also use this shiny black plastic, which is a magnet for fingerprints and scratches. You can just see here how many scratches and how much wear there actually is to this camcorder. Now it does have a Konica Minolta HD lens, but another glaring problem that it had was the fact that it has an extremely narrow field of view. It's actually a 60mm lens. It has an extremely narrow field of view, but at least they had the foresight to at least put lens threads so you can add a wide-angle lens to this camcorder, which I actually did have back when I was using this on a somewhat daily basis. I had a wide-angle lens because it's just, you have to step so far back just to get something in the picture because it's not a very wide-angle lens. You know, a camcorder like this camcorder was $499, at least that was the MSRP when this was newly released in 2010, but for that price you didn't get much. You were lucky to get this extremely low capacity battery, this charger. You didn't get an external SD card or anything, and all you got was a lens cap here. That isn't an automatic lens cap. You have to manually take it off and worry about, putting it somewhere so you don't lose it. And in addition to that, they didn't even give you a remote control to use the infrared receiver capabilities of this camcorder. You had to buy one separately for $30 to $40 when this was new. Furthermore, the standard definition model of this particular camcorder did have an LED light and had better low light performance. In fact, this camcorder's major complaints when it was new is that it has terrible low light performance, even for an HD camcorder of the time. But the standard definition model at least put an LED bulb and an LED light in here. But this HD one that does worse in low light than the standard definition model, they didn't even put an LED light in it. They just put something to cover it up where it should have been. but at least these built-in stereo condenser microphones have decent stereo separation and quality. And this hand strap here is extremely insubstantial. It actually feels very loose and insecure in my hand when I'm using it. It just feels like it's going to fall out of my hand any minute. But the one redeeming factor is that it actually has a hidden switch here that if you push in this hand strap clasp, you move that switch to the left and you pull this thing out, this strap out. It comes out and now turns into a regular wrist grip, a wrist strap that you can hang on to like you would with a regular digital camera. And another major or minor annoyance, depending on how you look at it, is the fact that they didn't put the SD card slot up here like they did on my standard definition Everio that I had for some time. They put it down here. So if you have this screwed into a tripod, you have to take it off a tripod to change the memory card. And yet another problem with this camcorder, yes, they do give you a locator pin, but they used plastic threaded tripod mounts, and after a few months of using this with a tripod, the threads actually got stripped, and I can't use this with a tripod now. And then you have your USB and DC power jacks that are hidden behind this plastic piece here. They do give you a 16:9 wide screen, LCD screen, but it's not a touch screen. It's what JVC calls laser touch operation. And how you go about navigating the menus, you can't just touch anything. You scroll up and down, and then you use one of these 5 buttons to make your selection. It takes some getting used to, especially if you use a touchscreen or you're used to using joysticks. And we do have a mono microphone, but the volume on it barely gets up to an audible level. And then we do have a playback control for video and photos, and we do have a mode switch for video or photo mode. And what I thought originally was this upload button, I thought it would have at least changed the video recording format to maybe MPEG-4 720p or something that you can upload straight to YouTube without any video editing. But all it does is if you turn this on, you'll see at the top of the screen it now just limits your recordings to 10 minutes. It doesn't actually change your recording format, codecs, or anything like that. And we do have a dedicated power button, so if you leave the screen open, you just hold the button to turn it off. And likewise, if you want to turn it on, the screen's still open, you just push the button and it'll turn back on. And just like the older Sony Handycams, this does use the tip ring sleeve 3.5mm video and audio jacks. It has a component output and a mini HDMI output. Another minor annoyance is when you have the screen folded up so that you can view it without getting a glare, and you have it on a flat surface, it actually sits crooked. The weight of the LCD screen is actually more than the camcorder itself, at least enough to pull it out of balance so it doesn't sit properly. So the only way to avoid that is to keep this fully flat, but then you get a glare on the screen and you can't actually see it. Here is the screen open now. We'll turn it on. So let's turn this on now again. I'm now capturing the analog out from this camcorder into my Sony Digital 8 Handycam from 1999, and we should be getting a picture now. Yeah, we are getting a video picture. And one thing you've probably noticed already is how wide angle, how narrow the field of view is. Here's a light bulb that I placed there, and I have this beyond where this table ends, and it looks like I'm zoomed in. This is all the way zoomed out, and normally with my other camcorders the field of view is right about here. So, and it also doesn't help that this doesn't have any optical image stabilization. It's all digital. It doesn't do a very good job at that. If you turn it off, you actually gain a somewhat wider picture, because if you just use the basic electronic image stabilization, it doesn't work very well if you have a lot of movement. And if you press menu, you have a few settings here. You have face priority, which just adjusts the exposure and focus based on what faces it detects, if any, in a video, if you turn on facial recognition. Register event, that's for setting up just pretty much like you're tagging the videos, and that only works with JVC's proprietary software. You have to use to import the videos. And then we get to video quality, and there are 4 different settings on this camcorder. And this camcorder has something called time-lapse recording, which is pretty neat. It'll take a picture at a preset interval. You've got one all the way up to 80 seconds. And then if you let this record for, let's say, an hour or two, it'll take all of those photos and put them together into one large time-lapse video file, which turns out actually very nice. Now, seamless recording is if you fill up the internal flash memory or the SD card, it'll switch to the other one, whichever is open. And then we have wind cut, which if I turn that on, it actually enables a low cut filter, which makes the audio a lot less bassy, have more treble. So if I switch this over to manual now, we have a few different settings now that appear, and it's something called focus assist, which tells you what's in focus by making it blue. So let's say I want to focus into this wood panel up here. I have to keep, and then we can see as it gets into focus it starts to turn blue. And then an effects menu, which just lets you do rudimentary in-camera effects like sepia, black and white, classic film, and strobe. Now you may have already noticed that in low light the image gets very smeary, grainy, and just overall very poor quality, even for HD. I have it on fully automatic now, and it seems to be doing an okay job of white balance. Yeah, fuel cell Tucson. Let's see where that is. Runs off of hydrogen and oxygen. Interesting. Okay, here's low light again, and it does an okay job. Here's another low light test, and again I'm standing, I'd say about 3 to 4 feet away from my desk, but it looks like I'm right on top of it. I'm zoomed all the way out, so definitely would need to use a wide-angle lens with this. But here's my iBook G4, which I will be using shortly to edit this video. And you can see once you turn on the lights, the quality does get a bit better. So here's a close focus test. Okay, here I am zoomed all the way in. You can see that the electronic image stabilization, even the advanced image stabilization, doesn't do a very good job. It definitely, you can see the artifacts of the electronic stabilization taking place. So the zoom speed is also rather slow on this, and a bit noisy.